Hello and welcome to episode 6 of our Q&A with Leif series. My name's Marnie Frost and this is the founder of the Orangutan Project, Leif Cocks. Thanks for joining us, Leif. Thank you again for sending in questions. We have questions again from our YouTube channel, from Leif's Conversations with Leif series, and also through a couple of different Facebook channels or subscribers. So thank you. I have several questions here. The first one is actually relating to what you were talking about last week, Leif, as far as intelligence and different species go. Orangutans are almost vegan, is that correct?
Yeah, predominantly vegetarians, just as humans have evolved. So they're not ideologically vegetarians. Some marten orangutans have been seen to eat slow lorises, and eggs and those sorts of things. Although slow lorises occur in Borneo orangutans have never been seen to eat a slow loris. So there's cultural differences. So which is obviously unique to each population of orangutans, not even the species, because orangutans like us adapt to the environment through culture. But predominantly the sensible process of finding the right amount of nutrition in the rainforest comes down to a mainly vegetarian diet.
And would you say that would be the same for humans, or are we naturally hunter-gatherers and therefore big meat eaters?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've essentially evolved as hunter-gatherers, but that can be very misleading because predominantly most of our diet is vegetarian or vegan naturally in forest. So the hunters may go and get some high value sort of meat items to bring back, as a heroes of the tribe, but it's really the women who are going out and doing the gathering and the collection are really the ones which are supplying most of the food for the community. And so the perfect proportion of protein and nutrients are found in a vegan diet. And the reason being is that is a reliable food source which our species have evolved. So certainly ideologically, just like the orangutans, the hunter-gatherers are not vegetarian by ideology, but by the practical nature of how it's best to exploit the rainforest environment for the tribe to survive.
Thank you. Okay, I have a question that's come in from 2 people, and this was after watching episode 4. These questions have come, and they're basically to do with paying Indonesia. Can we pay Indonesia to preserve their forest? So the first one is from Nitka, and she says, is paying Indonesian government lump sums every few years to actually get them to look after the rainforest and keep it standing, is that a viable option? And then Master Yoga has also asked, is the UN involved anyway? And can we get the UN to force governments to pay Indonesia to preserve the forest?
The answer is by demonstration is no. The world is far too much, too complex, if that makes sense. So the simple idea a government can just simply be paid and then preserve forest doesn't seem to have been working. In fact, Norway has offered $1 billion for this very thing. We've got $1 billion. You save so much forest, we'll actually just give you the $1 billion. Because the idea is one of the fundamental arguments that developed world has is, hey, you guys cut your forests down 200 years ago and become a developed nation. We want to cut our forests down and become a developed nation. Not realizing, yes, that is fundamentally true, but however, the nature of the planet at this stage is you're going to destroy the planet and the economic basis of yours. So it may not be just as far as looking historically back at the 2 nations, but it's absolutely necessary for their own national interest. So our experience so far is no, those simple solutions don't work. One of the reasons is, of course, and it's not just true of Indonesia, it's true in many countries around the world, including the West. We've lost control of our democracy to large business funders. And so, we know that there's papers by reputable universities, Ivy League universities in America, which demonstrate America is no longer democracy because there's no relationship between the will of the people and the government decisions. The will of the government's decisions are defined by the desires of the high corporate interests, and so we have to understand that these things are not simple. And this is why we was focused down particularly on each ecosystem we're trying to save, and specifically address the government relationship, the community relationships, and the business relationships, and after very specific outcomes. And we're finding that is a very successful model. Broad picture things do not seem to be effective. And if they are, they're probably not going to be effective in the timeline that we need to turn the situation around.
So it's sort of it's a grassroots approach we have rather than a top-down approach.
Exactly, because one of the things we're saying, for example, ban palm oil or whatnot, and then they've got many other things to plant, or go against this company, but there's many other companies, asking government, which have very difficult situations, to make a particular decision. What happens is what you call a leakage, because it's so hard. You think there seems to be some gain here, but it's just moving the problem onto another area or another situation. How you avoid leakage, in a sense, is defining, the very specific outcome and specific asks defined by the ecosystem, telling the medicine to the disease and giving the right prescription, the right dosage, and then there's no wiggle room, and the idea of leakage slowly disappears, which seems to be the major problem with big picture generic strategies.
Okay, thank you. This question is also from Nitka, and she said, my question is, Papua still has very beautiful rainforests, very similar to Borneo and Sumatra, but the palm oil companies are already slashing and burning there as well. Would it be possible to work with local tribal people and move some of the Bornean wildlife, especially orangutans, into Papua?
There may be an ethical issue in doing that may not be intuitively obvious. There's a thing called the Wallace line, which is actually between the island of Bali and the island of Lombok, where there's high currents there. And the significance of the Wallace line is the placental mammals, or what we call the higher mammals, your monkeys, your tigers, your deer, your pigs, only existed on that side of the Wallace line, which then kept Papua New Guinea, Australia free for the marsupials to survive. They can't compete against the high placental mammals, and also further on, New Zealand's only got birds and sea mammals, and that's protected them from the marsupials, and the marsupials are protected by the Wallace line from the high placental mammals. So if we transferred high placental mammals such as orangutans and other monkeys and other endangered wildlife into the Papuan forest, we would likely cause the extinction of the diverse and beautiful range of marsupials, which can only survive there when freed from the competition of the high placental mammals. So it may, from a conservation point of view, be actually a very bad thing.
Yeah.
So I think in general we have to, and the same applies to thinking that the zoos can save megafauna populations. We have to say, look, the reality, unfortunately, is it may be difficult to save them in their own habitat in the wild, but it's actually impossible to save them anywhere else. So we need to double down and focus on habitat protection and protecting the ecosystems of the right type, shape, and size of rainforest to take these species through the extinction crisis.
Thank you. I don't actually understand this question, but you probably do, because it's come from a question from the Conversations with Leif series on YouTube. And this person says, Leif, why do you say that we should not be fooled by legal fictions?
Mm-hmm. Well, I define a legal fiction. It's only real because of law, money. I mean, the paper money you have only makes sense because there's law that says you can freely whatever. Companies are legal fictions. Show me a company. It's not something hard or real. And the biggest legal fiction is countries. 200-300 years ago, colonial powers divided up Indonesia, Malaysia, and said, well, that's one country and this is another. Are they real? Well, they're not real. And people fight and die over things which is simply not real. What is real is the rainforest. What is more real, and from a philosophical basis, the realest thing is conscious living beings, and creating a better world and relieving their suffering is the most important and real thing we can attribute to. But why is that important for conservation? Because I see so many times the legal fictions we create to affect meaningful change, and they're necessary. Companies are necessary to collectivize capital, to make money, and businesses. NGOs or non-government organizations such as the Orangutan Project are needed to collectivize in order to affect meaningful change. But what happens is these legal fictions become more important than the outcome. And you find NGOs fighting each other, conservationists becoming more loyal to their brand, more loyal to the organization, competing for grants, competing for resources in order to support their own sense of self-identity and support their sense of lack of self-worth internally. So one of the important things we have to remember, and this is why people often get shocked when they say, how much do you care about the orangutan? I don't care about it at all. It's just something I'm using to affect meaningful change. In fact, the world I want to create is where the Orangutan Project has no value, because the orangutans all live in secure and viable populations. I want the Orangutan Project to be destroyed. And most importantly, all decisions are made, doesn't make sense, in the best interests of orangutan, the indigenous communities, other wildlife and biodiversity in future generations. The decisions are never made in the best interest of the Orangutan Project, because it is a legal fiction and we have to remember it is fiction.
I just want to clarify, Leif did not say he didn't care about orangutans. He said he didn't care about the Orangutan Project. That all makes sense. Thank you. Did you notice my cat came in again? Every week we film this, and every week she comes in. I apologize for the meowing. We have one last question, and it's actually a light-hearted question from one of our Australian volunteers. And she asks, do orangutans ever pair up or mate for life?
No, they don't pair up and mate for life. And I guess humans don't normally do this either naturally. That's why they call it 7-year itch, where they fall in love and the endorphins are going. Then after 7 years and the human infants are semi-independent in the tribe, 5 or so years old, then it's probably maybe a good time to make a better selection. But of course, in a modern age, some of us decide, hey, I actually really like the person I'm with, so we don't want to change. But so it is quite natural in all sorts of animal systems to have a series of mating changes. But most importantly for the orangutan, they're on the edge of survival, trying to find enough food to support the mother and her baby within the rainforest. And if you ever seen a male orangutan, it's twice the size of the females. So in other words, it's a large fruit-eating machine. And so once he gets the female orangutan pregnant, the best thing he can do, because remember, female orangutans naturally don't have a predator. They've evolved in a predator-free environment until humans come along. So he doesn't need to be there for protection. But he's a large fruit-eating machine in the territory where the mother is trying to find enough food for herself and the baby. So the best thing he can do is leave and move to another area. And of course, she's not going to have baby, for example, for the Ponga pig and Moro, or up to 9 years for the Sumatran orangutan. And so he's probably better off going to further afield to see if there's other females who are ready to allow him to contribute more to the next generation.
And do orangutan females ever have female friendships that will last long, or they're way more solitary?
Female orangutans are semi-solitary. And so, but female orangutans tend to set territories next to their mothers. And this gives them a huge advantage because culturally they've been trained to learn about Pacific rainforest and the particular dangers and food sources within that rainforest. So they greatly increase their chance of survival by staying territory next to their mother. And then the mother gets an advantage because her daughters will allow her to access food supplies within her environment because they know each other and they share the same genetic material. Males, on the other hand, have a high rate of death, and they leave the natal area, which helps contribute to the high rate of death. And that's good because you want them out of the area because they're genetically similar and they need to find a more genetically diverse mates. So for a female, she lives in the environment where she's living alone with offspring, but when there's large fruiting trees, I call it the Christmas and Easters of the orangutan world, all the related females get together and share and enjoy each other's company, and all their babies play with each other in the trees. So it's a wonderful, diverse and beautiful landscape, and friendships between related females is long-lasting and for a lifetime.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for sending in your questions. Thank you for watching. Please do keep sending them in. We're going to be doing at least another 4 episodes, I think, so we've got time to answer your queries. Thank you, and thank you, Leif. We'll talk again next week.
Thank you.
See you later.